Hi, my name is Othelia Jumapao. I also go by Oni, and I am a fourth-year English major with an Asian American Studies minor. So I helped with the creation of the Asian American History Project. Basically, we wanted to compile a list of narratives that captured the life experiences of not only students, but alumni, see where they are currently. Also, just like local Asian American like entrepreneurs, business owners, just really capturing like what does like the Asian American narrative look like. So I became interested in this project because of the class that I took, Black and Latinx History at UF, which was taught by an amazing group of professors, and I was surrounded by a really cool cohort of people who were social justice like oriented. And we noticed that there was kind of like a dearth of Asian American stories and talking about their involvement with campus activism. So that's how we got started. I think with even this project existing, that's like a really big step in the right direction because it's recognizing like a whole community and saying that there's value in their stories. I think a really big part of it too is like in Florida, there's like this huge like rise of Asian American like communities, ethnic enclaves like happening. Like I think there are more than like 1 million Asian Americans like in Florida alone. And I would love to see the project kind of like grow and kind of bounce off of that. Like, what are the migration waves or the motivations to why they're coming to Florida? How have they affected like local culture in Florida as well? Popular culture, or how does that differ from like the West Coast? Because we see a lot of narratives of the West Coast, but we need to think beyond just California and start thinking about what cool things are happening in Florida. So since we've started the collection, I've done 14 interviews.
I'm with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and my name is Othelia Jumapao, Otheliajumapao. For anybody who's transcribing this, so they can spell my name right. And I'm with Alicia Soler. Is for an interview to help with our Asian American archive. So, Alicia, if you could just like introduce yourself,
Mhm.
I guess, what you were involved in during your time here at UF,
Mhm.
and then what you do now.
Um, I think in the very beginning, we really wanted to focus on people who were student activists or really like strong proponents for Asian American resources and the Asian American Studies minor, or any influential faculty or staff that kind of aided that process. And then it slowly morphed into me using the project to help with my thesis. So then I started interviewing UF Filipino American students. And that was just a very general topic because I just wanted to learn about their family's history. Yeah, I think it was really amazing to kind of find out that these stories of like student activism, they didn't just begin all of a sudden when the Asian American Student Union formed. So there were like a lot of years past or a lot of predecessors that were already planting those seeds for like we want a student organization that represents us and we want to include South Asians. And there has always been like a issue for our Asian American Student Union because when you think Asian American, you usually think East Asian. And there's been like this ongoing project to include them in that conversation in our community. And the fact that that issue is not new and the fact that that has always been thought of since the conception of the student union, I think was like very groundbreaking. So it goes to show that even from the very beginning, we wanted to have like an inclusive, welcoming community. I think one of the problems that might be unique with this project is that a lot of the times Asian American narratives aren't really spotlighted or put in the center. And because we see that lack of representation, sometimes we internalize it to the point where I'll ask people who have been involved with projects and say like, oh, I want to interview you, like I'm really interested. And sometimes I'll get the response of like, I have nothing to say. Like, really, me? Like I don't know if I have anything important to say. And I think that's like a really interesting kind of like moral dilemma or kind of like philosophical dilemma that we're really like trying to switch up and like show them that their narratives matter, and that they do have a lot to say. One of the most memorable stories was talking to a second generation Filipino American, and he told me about his father's involvement with the People's Revolution. So this is kind of like during the Marcos regime, where the martial law kind of really censored journalists, and it was basically a fascist dictatorship. And I was just amazed that he knew stories of his own dad like protesting in the streets and being a really big like supporter for like free speech and democracy. Because when I started the project, I was like, I want to test if people like, know their family histories. And it was like this really cool like realization where I'm like, oh my goodness, people do know their family histories. What do I know? And it was like this really cool like cycle of inspiration for me to really like question and like ask like how my parents have been politically involved. I definitely think oral history and oral tradition has been passed down from my family. And like my grandma recently passed away. So like going through this thesis project and asking these Filipino American students just like me, like, oh, how do you know like your family history, or how do you know how to speak Tagalog so well? And then it was just so like, I don't know, just like heartwarming, because they would talk about the presence of their grandparents and how that was pivotal to like their identity formation. And I think that's a really big part of like Asian culture, Asian American culture, the idea of respect, but also like elder care, and how does that turn into like childcare as well, because a lot of the times our like immigrant parents are working 9 to 5, so they're too tired to like do all of the nurturing of the children. So it was definitely really cool to see that reflected. In terms of like not limiting, our stories to just like Asian American individuals, but to people and allies that have been there and present. So I think a really cool thing that people are probably going to explore is just like the intersectionality of all of these narratives. How does like Asian Americans showing up for Black and brown folks, like how does that play out? Like, are there different dynamics? And then what are the common factors in like trying to navigate through institutions? So I think that'll be a cool thing that people are looking at. What's really cool about oral history, because at least how I would used to think of it, would always be about the interviewee. Like, what is the story they need to tell? Like, how can I facilitate that in like a safe, compassionate way, and really try to, show empathy for that person. But I think it's so interesting when you see that reflected to yourself as the interviewer, because then you start asking yourself the same questions, or your mind or your like, political ideology is shifted or changed. So it just goes to show that I think everybody's kind of like an oral historian or a storyteller, and like thinking about your own position when you're asking to hear stories.